Hello, welcome back. We're on day 3 and I'm with Cesar Gonzalez, the Executive Chairman of Bonterra Resources. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well.
Good. Look, why don't we, the first time actually on the channel for Bonterra, why don't you just give us a real brief introduction to the company and then we'll actually dive into some more interesting news like Osisko.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bonterra is a company based in the Abitibi, which is the largest gold belt in Canada, prolific gold belt. And we have 2 land packages, one to the north where we have a mill and a past producing mine, and then the one to the south which is in a JV with what used to be Osisko and will be Goldfields. You know, the vote is next month, if all goes according to plan. The 7th largest gold miner in the world, which has planted their flag in Canada, and we're caught up in the middle of all of that.
Good. Right, yeah, because that's right next to Winfield as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have 22,500 hectares which abut the land package. Actually, they're sandwiched in between the land package that Osisko had. And we have 2 deposits, Barry and Gladiator, each with about 1.5 million ounces and 15 kilometers to the Windfall project.
Okay.
So it forms a triangle that is about 10 million ounces.
So I guess the key question is, obviously, that seems like quite a significant deposit, Winfield, and that's probably part of the main reason why they've decided to take over Osisko, right? How were Osisko looking at the JV with you in terms of incorporating that into Winfield, and would it make sense for Goldfields to look at it in the same way?
That's a great question. So we have 2 deposits where we have resources, but where Osisko focused most of their attention was on really an exploration play 5 kilometers from their mill. So about as close as you can get to their mill, future mill, and it's called Moss. We had drilled some surface holes that came back with very high grades, narrow but high grade, all above 200 meters. They had a theory that there was something larger at depth. They're experts at drilling deep holes, and that was actually the focus of the JV up until now.
Okay.
What Goldfields plans to do is something that we'll have to discuss.
Yeah.
I think they're busy trying to close the deal.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, why don't we just go back to basics? Obviously, you've mentioned a little bit about where you are. You're in the Abitibi. Correct. I think you're around 250 kilometers from Val-d'Or on one of the assets, about 150 k's on the other asset. Just give us a little bit of an idea as to what your main priorities are with these 2 assets and what you're currently working on.
Sure. So the JV land, obviously, was JV'd by Osisko, who were advancing a world-class deposit, which itself was JV'd and now is being consolidated. That became the focus of the company. But if you rewind to 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this was actually a producing company. It had production, and it was all in the north, where the mill is. There was a mine called Bachelor. There was a development project called Moroy, and a bunch of infrastructure. A mill, tailing storage facility, an assay lab. So a lot of the assays were done in-house, camp, hydroelectricity. So it's actually interesting how Bonterra has evolved over the years, where the production was the primary asset, and that migrated to the exploration potential once the discovery at Windfall, once the Osisko team took over that asset and really started drilling it aggressively. And that was 15 kilometers from our deposits. So we said, okay, this is getting all the attention. This is world-class in nature. We got to focus on what's going on down there as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so safe to say at the moment, because it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got this asset with a mill. It was in production recently. I guess one question is, why did the mill? Why did it close? And I think it's an 800 ton per day mill, right? So
correct.
This was I assume an underground high-grade deposit that you were pumping out, right? So what was the backstory there in terms of why that closed, and I guess are the ambitions to reopen that?
So let's start with the first part of that question. We shut it down because the ore was exhausted from the historical Bachelor mill or deposit, which was always burdened with a stream. So years ago, Sandstorm, when they were starting out as a new company, after the financial crisis, I think around 2008, they negotiated some very good deals for themselves, and one of those deals was at Bachelor. And so they had a stream on that deposit, which was very good for Sandstorm, not so good for Metanor. And that plus, the weak gold price, getting toward the end of the mine life of that deposit, all that culminated into a decision to shut it down. There is a deposit very close by called Moroy that got some attention as a means to keep things going, but it wasn't large enough to justify continuing the milling operations. Plus, we went through a pretty nasty period with gold prices. Yeah. They bottomed out around 1,050 in December of 2015 and have been climbing ever since. And now we're at all-time highs. Today,
as of today,
is an all-time high gold price, and it feels great. The macro setting is exciting. There's some attention coming in, but it hasn't yet filtered down to the juniors, which we are. Even though we have a GAV now with the 7th largest gold miner in the world.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. And I guess what does that mean in terms of that area? How much focus does that actually now warrant, given the attention that it deservedly is further where Osisko, where now Goldfields are on the JV projects? I guess what I'm just trying to get my head around is this now really all about the JV land, or is the story still part of this mill and the asset further up?
So when we did the JV, which was a year ago, Osisko had to spend a lot of money, and they've spent quite a bit in a short order. In about 7 months, they drilled 60,000 meters. They had up to 8 rigs on the property at one point in time. When they were doing that, we said, why don't we go up to the north? We had some flow-through capital, which is unique to Canada and especially in Quebec, that we had to spend. Rather than spending it on the JV, where there was money being spent by the operator of the JV of Osisko, we spent it in the north. We did some geophysics, aerial and ground. We did some drilling on areas that had never been touched. Because if you look at the drilling that's been done on our northern land package, 90% was in and around the mill and the mine. The other 10% was regional. And so now we're spending a lot of time thinking about what is here from a regional perspective. It's actually a bigger land package than the south. In the greenstone, which in the Abitibi you want to be in the greenstone rocks. Yep. And so we are a couple weeks into a program. We're drilling about a 5,000 meter program in the north to follow up on what we did in the 4th quarter of last year. So we are drilling it. Okay. But it's not in and around the mill, but I should caveat by saying that you can truck long distances where we are. There's timber roads and it's relatively flat, but we are drilling in areas where if we find something, it's going to the mill. Yep. 15, 20 Ks.
Yeah, it's nothing for high-grade ore to go.
Correct. And actually, Metanor in 2008, 2009 was mining the open pit portion of Barry, which is 110 kilometers away from the mill, and trucking it up to the mill. Yeah. So when I say the immediate area, we're not within a stone's throw, but we are very close.
No, but there's other examples that I know of. Even in Alaska, there's a mine that's just opened up that are going to be trucking, I think 50, 100 kilometers or so to Fort Knox. So it's not out of this world to be able to do that if it's 15, 20 kilometers. It won't be that much.
They'll probably make an episode of Ice Road Truckers for these guys.
Yeah, they probably
in
will.
In the winter time, they're hauling gold.
Yeah. In terms of the street, okay, so that's exciting. So the more you find there, potentially the possibility to go fast track into production with the existing mill. The stream that you were talking about, was that just on the deposit, or is that actually on throughput through the mill?
It was restructured. So that was the past. That stream was restructured to a royalty. Okay. Which we have the ability to. Yeah, we have the ability to buy that down for more than 50% for a couple million US dollars. So I think what it'll net out to after the buy down is around 1.8% from what it historically was, which was 20% of production at 400 an ounce. One of the original. Wow. Pardon my French, ball buster deal.
we were talking to McEwen earlier, and they mentioned a stream similar to with Sandstorm, and that was 600 at 10%. So 20% at 400 is, God, that hurts. All right, I'm glad that got restructured.
It got restructured, and the royalties are now both at the Bachelor operations or former operations, and then on Barry. Yeah. But they don't touch Gladiator, which is a high-grade deposit, very close to Windfall, actually.
Okay, good. All right, so I think that's the north. You're doing some more drilling up there. I think that's quite exciting. There's potential fast-track routes into production from the work that you could do up there, by the sounds of it, through trucking to the existing facility. Any sort of, it's been on care and maintenance for what, 6 years or so? Is it still in good condition?
We used it in 2020, believe it or not, to process a bulk sample from the underground. The other deposit that I mentioned, Moroy, which was supposed to be the reason to keep the mill going. We did the bulk sample, it looked okay, but a lot of things happened with costs and gold price not really reacting, so we let that underground infrastructure flood, and then we put the mill on care and maintenance. So the mill was last used in 2020.
Which is not so that's not that long ago.
That long ago, yeah.
Okay, good. So in theory, shouldn't be a capex blowout, capex killer to restart that thing.
And what we're doing now is we've been doing for a while is permitting an expansion of both the tailings storage facility, which needs to be expanded because it's close to capacity, but also of the mill capacity to go from 800 tons to 1,800 tons per day.
Awesome.
Which gives you a lot more optionality to process lower grade ore and have some economies of scale.
Yeah, nice. Okay, very good. Okay, let's go back down south.
Sure.
Okay, so what's the current plan at the moment? Just remind us, what's the ounces in the ground? How much work had been done today? Obviously, you were talking about Osisko doing a lot of the work.
Recently. But historically, there's been a lot of drilling at both Gladiator and Barry. Each one of those deposits has about 1.5 million ounces, so it's about 3 million ounces combined.
Okay.
And then there's Moss, which is a new discovery at depth. There's no resource there yet.
No, but you've got some drill intercepts on there that look pretty impressive.
Oh,
right?
yes.
They're really high grade, so they're follow-up targets, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
How, again, it goes back to that question, I guess, and how Osisko were looking at it, but were they putting those 2 JV deposits into their mine plan originally?
Well, it's too early to do that. And in fact, they chose, of the 60,000 meters since the JV was announced and formalized, and by the way, it's an earn-in. It turns into a JV after they spend 30 million, and I think they're around halfway there.
Okay.
But they decided to spend most of the money at this new Moss target as opposed to drilling out the existing resources.
Okay.
So they wanted to find something new.
And what's the terms on the Moss target at the moment in terms of the breakdown of the JV? How much do you own? How much does Goldfield potentially own?
It's 30-70, so 30% us, 70% them. Once they spend the 30 million in the ground, they have 3 years to do that. We're not even a year into it, but they've already spent about half the money Osisko did.
Yep.
Goldfield's stepping into that. And there was also a $5 million upfront payment to us, so 35 million for 70% of that. And I will say that when we did that deal, we negotiated it at this conference last year, so about a year ago, our market cap was below 20 million.
Yeah.
So we saw this as a way to fund, our primary assets in the least dilutive way possible, in partnership with a company that knows a thing or two about drilling the camp.
Yeah. No, it's a good idea. So what's the end game with this? Obviously, they spend the 30 million that you're left with 30%. They're left with the 70. Do you want to hold on to the 30, or are you hoping that it gets bought? What's the
at these prices? I just want my stock to reflect value for what we already have, and then from there, there's M&A scenarios once the share prices are at a more reasonable level. The Goldfield CEO gave a recent interview where he talks about the acquisition of Osisko, but just the market in general, and ounces are not being priced properly by the market, especially in the lower market caps. And the corporates are paying big premiums. The premium that they paid for Osisko on an all-cash basis was 55% on a 20-day VWAP, 66% from the previous trading day. It was announced on a Monday, so from Friday's close. That's telling you that the market isn't, typically a control premium is 35%, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, and that's for a company that had a $1 billion plus market cap. So when you step down to 50 million, 45 million like we are, there's an even bigger disparity, bigger value arbitrage. And so I'm happy we were not included in part of that transaction because our share price is too low. We're doing marketing, which is what this is all about, being at this conference. We're traveling to Europe this fall as well, getting the story out there, trying to get people to see what we see. And so a lot of it is just telling people what's already happened and what the excitement is all about, this new discovery at Moss, our ounces in the ground, where things are trading, when corporates step in, because there's, as I said, a big value arbitrage between the market and where corporates are doing transactions.
Okay. So I guess the main thing is, obviously, where they've only at this 15 million out of the 30 spent, for the JV to be confirmed or to finalise, Goldfields need to come in and they need to really continue that drill program, put some money into the ground, right? And I guess this is the unanswered or unknown thing at the moment is, are they just going to focus on development or are they going to continue exploration? And it's, if in the scenario where they continue exploration, obviously that's great news. In the scenario where they don't, I guess then you become, after the 2 years, you'd become 100% owners of that land again?
We would, theoretically.
Yeah.
I doubt that they allow that to happen. But if you go back to their press release, and they put out a presentation with the rationale on why they did the transaction, they specifically mention our JV.
Did they? Okay.
Oh yeah. In the press release, there's a section called strategic rationale. And there's, at the end of one of the, I think it's the second paragraph, it's, talks about the Bonterra JV. They use a very specific term, which I like to, I'll reuse because I like it. It's near mine exploration.
Yeah.
Because the land package that Osisko has is massive. And I'm sure there's gold all over the place. It's the Abitibi, most prolific belt in Canada. But we know that there are 2 deposits, about 1.5 million each, 15 kilometers from their mill. And now you have Moss, which is only 5 kilometers away.
Yeah.
So that's what when they're referring to near mine exploration, I'm sure there are other things within Osisko's package that we don't know about. We know what's on our side of the fence, and that's near mine exploration. So I don't think that they would do the transaction and put their heads down and only focus on what's beneath the mill. I think they need to have, proof or a proof of concept that there's going to be other stuff for the future.
Yeah, okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, say for example we're sitting here 12 months' time from now. What do you want to be able to tell me?
Ooh, that's the multi-million-dollar question. So I'd love for my share price to better reflect the value of what's already been done on the ground, the strategic position that we have with one of the world's largest gold miners in one of the safest, best mining jurisdictions on the planet. Maybe some excitement around the land package to the north where we have 100% ownership. For most of it, we have a 70-30 JV, 70% in our favor with O3 Mining as well. But most of the land is 100% ours. We have a mill, we have a camp, just to get things going again in the north, because we've largely ignored it, in favor of what was going on in the south, because you had all the excitement with Windfall growing every year, getting more and more meters, and then eventually being taken out at a really nice price. But I think there's enough here where if we start to tell the story and we get a better share price, it gives us more options to then raise capital, to do a little more drilling, to take matters in our own hands. And so a year from now, I hope to have a higher share price with more activity on our wholly owned stuff, and then with some more clarity on what's going to happen in the south. So I can be able to tell investors, like, they're drilling now, they've drilled another 50 million, they've earned into their percentage. They're thinking of including one of our assets in part of their mine plan because Barry has a mining license. Yeah. Windfall still does not. So if you want to start putting stuff through a mill 2 years from now or whenever the mill is constructed,
makes sense at Barry's, yeah.
It's there. It's got a mining license.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, look, there are a lot of possibilities, and it's one of those where it's all up in the air at the moment because obviously the deal hasn't been confirmed and we're waiting for confirmation. But there's a lot of good that can come from this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the north as well with these drill results. So
same. And look, Peter, there's uncertainty where the outcomes are largely negative, and then there's uncertainty where the outcomes are exciting. And exactly. I think we're in the latter category.
No, I'd agree with that. No, Cesar, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.